Napoleon Bonaparte rose from a small island nobody had heard of, speaking French with a foreign accent, mocked by his classmates, dismissed by his peers, and became the most powerful ruler in the world. His life is not just a story of military conquest. It is a masterclass in ambition, psychology, strategy, leadership, resilience, and legacy. These 10 lessons are drawn from his life not to glorify war, but to extract the timeless principles that made him extraordinary, and to ask, what would happen if you applied even a fraction of this thinking to your own life? Master the art of rapid decision-making. Napoleon Bonaparte didn't win battles because he had the biggest army. He won because he thought faster than everyone else in the room. While other generals held councils, debated, and waited for perfect conditions, Napoleon was already moving. He famously made decisions with incomplete information, about 70% certainty, and then committed fully. The remaining 30% he figured out mid-execution. In your life, waiting for the perfect moment is the most dangerous trap you can fall into. Perfect moments don't exist. The person who acts first, adjusts fastest, and commits hardest almost always wins. Train yourself to decide, move, and adapt. That cycle, repeated fast enough, is what the world calls genius. Hesitation is not caution. Hesitation is fear dressed in the costume of wisdom. Napoleon knew the difference, and he refused to let fear make his decisions for him. Turn your weaknesses into obsessions. When Napoleon arrived at a French military academy at age 9, he was mocked for everything. His Corsican accent, his short stature, his foreign name, which French classmates couldn't even pronounce. By every social standard of the time, he was an outsider with no business leading the greatest army in European history. But Napoleon did something rare. He let the mockery become fuel. He didn't shrink. He studied harder, pushed further, and carried a quiet, burning rage that never left him. Every insult became a reason to work. Every closed door became a target. The lesson is this: your disadvantages are not obstacles. They are engines, if you choose to use them that way. The things people mocked you for might be the exact things that push you further than anyone who had it easy from the start. Pain, when properly channeled, is the most reliable fuel there is. Study your enemy more than yourself. Before every major battle, Napoleon spent hours, sometimes days, studying his opponents, not just their armies, but their personalities, their habits, their fears, their past defeats. He read their biographies, analyzed their previous campaigns, and built a mental model of how they thought. By the time he faced them on the battlefield, he already knew what they would do before they did it. Most people spend all their time looking inward, improving themselves, refining their skills. That's important. But Napoleon's real edge was looking outward. He understood that the world is not a solo game. There are always opponents, competitors, rivals, and challenges coming from outside. The person who understands others deeply holds an invisible advantage that no amount of self-improvement alone can give you. Know your competition the way you know yourself, and then know them better. Sleep less, think more. Guard your mental hours. Napoleon slept roughly 4 to 6 hours a night, not because he was reckless with his health, but because he believed the quiet hours, the hours when the world was still, were the most valuable hours a person could own. He took short, intentional naps during the day, waking refreshed and immediately returning to work. He once said that most men waste their best thinking hours asleep, eating, or in idle conversation. And he was ruthless about protecting his mental energy for what mattered most. The lesson isn't sleep less. The lesson is be intentional about your hours. Most people give their sharpest mental energy to distractions, social media, small talk, passive entertainment, and save only the leftovers for their most important work. Napoleon reversed that equation entirely. Guard the hours when you think most clearly. Use them only for what deserves them most. Build loyalty through recognition, not money. Napoleon understood something that most leaders never figure out. People don't risk their lives for gold. They risk their lives for meaning, identity, and the feeling of being truly seen. So in 1802, he created the Légion d'honneur, a system of medals and honors for soldiers who showed extraordinary bravery or service. These were ribbons, pieces of metal. They cost almost nothing, and yet soldiers would charge into cannon fire to earn one. When asked why he gave out so many medals, Napoleon replied that it was with such trinkets that men were led. He wasn't being cynical. He was being deeply human. Recognition, when it is sincere and public, is one of the most powerful motivating forces that exists. In your career, your relationships, your leadership, never underestimate the power of truly seeing someone. A genuine acknowledgement, given at the right moment, creates loyalty that money simply cannot buy. Silence is a weapon. Use it. Napoleon was notorious in negotiations and meetings for his use of silence. When someone finished speaking, he would simply stare at them, not coldly, not aggressively, just quietly, for what felt like an unbearably long time. Most people couldn't handle it. They would start filling the silence, talking too much, revealing too much, making concessions they never intended to make. Napoleon said almost nothing and walked away having won. We live in a world that is terrified of silence. People fill every pause with words, noise, and nervous energy. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. It forces the other person to think, to question, to reconsider. The next time you're in a tense conversation, a negotiation, or a moment where you feel the urge to speak first, don't. Hold the silence. You will be amazed how much people reveal when you simply give them space to do so. Never let success make you predictable. Napoleon's greatest strength for most of his career was his total unpredictability. His enemies built entire strategies around what they expected him to do, and he always did something else. He attacked where no one expected an attack. He moved faster than armies were supposed to move. He broke the rules of conventional warfare so consistently that his opponents were always reacting, never leading. But by 1812, when he launched his catastrophic invasion of Russia, something had changed. He had become successful enough that he trusted his old playbook: keep pushing forward, overwhelm with speed and force. The Russians simply retreated, burned their own land, and waited for winter. Napoleon, for the first time, couldn't adapt. His greatest strategy had become his greatest trap. The moment you become predictable is the moment you become beatable. Success is seductive because it whispers that what worked before will work again. Never stop questioning your own winning formula. Read voraciously. Across every field, Napoleon traveled everywhere with a portable library. Even on military campaigns, he carried hundreds of books, not just military strategy, but history, philosophy, science, law, and literature. He was an obsessive reader who believed that the broader your knowledge, the more tools you had to solve any problem. He once said that a leader who doesn't read is no better than one who can't read, and his reading showed in unexpected ways. He reformed France's entire legal system because he had studied law deeply enough to see its flaws. He redesigned Paris's infrastructure because he had studied urban planning. The most dangerous thinkers are rarely the deepest experts in one narrow field. They are the people who have read widely enough to connect ideas across disciplines and apply something unexpected from one field to solve a problem in another. Read everything. Let it all mix together. The combinations are where the genius lives. Reframe failure as intelligence. Napoleon's Egyptian campaign of 1798 was, by almost every military measure, a failure. He lost his fleet, was cut off from France, suffered from plague, and ultimately had to abandon his army and sneak back to Paris. A lesser man would have been finished. But Napoleon did something extraordinary. He reframed the entire expedition as a great intellectual and civilizational achievement. He had brought scientists, historians, and artists to Egypt. He had uncovered ancient history. He returned to France not as a defeated general, but as an explorer and visionary. This isn't about delusion or dishonesty. It's about understanding that failure contains genuine intelligence, real lessons, real data, real experience that success can never give you. But beyond that, how you narrate your failures shapes how others see you and, more importantly, how you see yourself. Reframe your setbacks, not as proof that you can't do something, but as tuition you paid for the version of you that will eventually succeed. Fall completely. Rise on your own terms. Control your legacy. Napoleon was exiled twice. The first time, he escaped from the island of Elba after less than a year, returned to France, retook power, and ruled for another 100 days before his final defeat at Waterloo. Even in failure, he was extraordinary. The second exile sent him to the remote island of St. Helena, thousands of miles from Europe, where he would spend the last 6 years of his life. And here is where Napoleon did perhaps his most underrated work. He wrote. He dictated his memoirs, shaped his own story, and crafted the legend of Napoleon Bonaparte with the same precision he once used to plan battles. He knew that the physical war was over, but the war for history was just beginning. By the time he died in 1821, he had already won that war. The final lesson is this: your legacy is not what happens to you. It is the story you choose to tell about what happened to you. Even in your lowest moments, even when everything has been taken, you still own your narrative. Guard it. Shape it. Tell it on your own terms. Because the story outlives everything else.